Good evening, everyone. Just getting started at 6, so we're going to give people a few more minutes to join. Expecting some more council members. I see some new faces / names, so welcome. Thank you for joining.
Ahmad Jazeer, staff member of Assembly Member William Colton.
Well, thank you for joining.
You're welcome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Hi, Amy. Welcome.
Hi, Liz.
Happy Tuesday. So, we'll give folks maybe 1 or 2 more minutes to join, and then we'll get started. All right. Gonna give folks just a few more seconds and then we'll get started. So some people may trickle in, but I do want to be mindful it's a Tuesday night and you'll have other things to get to, so I'll get started. I will officially call the meeting to order, and I'm wondering if I may have a motion from one of our council members.
Motion.
Wonderful.
Motion.
And a second from Amy. Wonderful.
Yes.
So we're gonna start off at 6:04. Thank you all for joining. I did want to do sort of a quick roll call for CEC members to confirm who is in attendance. We may have others join. We did get additional folks to RSVP, but for the time being, I just wanted to sort of go around the room and confirm who is present from our CEC and from our Special Education Committee. So how do we go about doing this, Jay? Should I just call out people?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay, great. So Jay,
Present.
Amy,
Present.
Petra, may join later. Priscilla, speak of the person. Hi, Petra. Good evening. She is present. Priscilla may join later. And Randy,
Present.
welcome, welcome.
And Liz is obviously present.
Oh, yes, I didn't call myself present here. Wonderful. So thank you all for joining. It's taken some time for us to get this started, and I apologize. It's been hard to schedule, and things have been moving so quickly, but we're excited to get this committee kicked off. I just wanted to just go around the virtual Zoom room and allow folks to introduce themselves, not only the CEC members, but also any attendees. For me, I think it would be helpful just understanding, one, your name, the group that you're representing, or the school that you're representing, and then your interest in special education, or like your sort of level as a stakeholder in special education. So I did want to go around the virtual room and allow people to sort of share their interest in attending our meetings and interest in this conversation. So my name is Liz. I am a CEC member and chairing the Special Education Committee. I have 2 kids in public school, a 5th grader and a 4K pre-K student who receives special services. He's been getting special services since he was in early childhood, early intervention, and started at the age of 15 months. And these services have been incredibly helpful. So happy to be an advocate for younger kids. And I think we have some representation across the spectrum here in this group, which I think is going to be really special. So Jay, you're up first on my virtual screen. So if you don't mind just sharing your role and then your connection to special education.
Sure. Thanks, Liz. Jay Brown. I'm president of CEC 21. I have 2 kids in the public school system here in New York City, both in elementary school. One of my sons, it has an IEP. So special education is near and dear to my heart. And yeah, I think that about covers it for this
Yes.
committee. Yeah, to be here.
Absolutely. Cheryl, I see you up next on my screen.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Levitzidis. I am a parent of 3 children, 1 in high school, 2 in middle school, 2 on the spectrum, and only 1 with an IEP. And I'm also part of my Kingsborough's SLT.
Awesome.
I'm also a parent coordinator in the district.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining. All right, Randy, I see you up next on my screen.
Sorry, I'm on my phone, so I'm
All
trying to
good.
unmute.
Yeah.
So my name is Randy Garay. I am the first vice president on CEC 21. I'm also the president of President's Council in District 21, CPAC co-chair, PTA president of Kingsborough. I have 2 children, one who graduated in 2018 from Kingsborough, one who's in the 8th grade currently in Kingsborough. My daughter had received services in early intervention. She went through CPSE, CSE, and was oh my goodness, I can't think. She no longer has an IEP as of kindergarten. All the services that she received were pretty aggressive in the early years, and she no longer needs services. I was last year the IEP parent on CEC 21, so it's still a strong passion of mine to make sure that children get the services that they need, and that I help advocate for parents, especially during the IEP process time. Thank you.
That's wonderful. Thanks, Randy. Imam, I see you up next on my screen.
Good evening, everyone. So I am Imam Ahmed Ali, staff member of Assembly Member Carlton, and Assembly Member is in Albany right now, so he told me to represent him here, and he's very concerned that more resources should be included in the city and state budgets to meet the needs of children with special needs, and so their families. And please, if anything we can do, you can always email at our office, and we will be taking care of it. So I am here and I'm going to take the notes for the meetings. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining. Amy, I see you up next on my screen.
Hi, my name is Amy. I'm also a PTA president from public school, and I have 2 kids. They have IEP service. I'm very present with the service and really love it because it helped them a lot. I went through like speech, OT, and PT for one of my kids, and their speech like built up so much. So I'm very happy with the service, and I'm happy to share with other family here. And is the well, I have been in the PTAs for a few years too, so hopefully stay for a few more years to help out with all the parents. And with the special service, there's a lot to learn about, and a lot of family they didn't know about it. They should brought it up, and we are here to help.
Yeah, Absolutely. Thanks, Amy. And I just want to call out that you're our special education representative, right, for CEC 21. So special VIP from the CEC in terms of special education, and Petra as well, who's our District 75 representative. So Petra, do you want to introduce yourself, share your connection? What we're doing is just sharing our names, our role, and then our connection to special education and sort of why you're here joining our committee meeting.
Okay, my name is Petra Remy, and I'm a member of the CEC 21. I'm a president designee for District 75 President Council. I'm also a member of the SLT in my son's school. My son has been receiving services from 2.5, and I'm a strong advocate for special needs students. And I'm very happy to be on this committee, and I'll try my best to use all my resources to make this committee successful.
Awesome. Thank you, Petra. Appreciate you joining. And last but not least on my screen, I see Tony.
Hi, how are you? Sorry. I'm
Yes.
Tony Fruption. I am a parent. My son is a senior in high school though, and he does not have an IEP. My other children did, but they're adults now. I'm just here from Councilman Brannan's office just to listen and learn.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining.
You're very
Hopefully-
welcome. Thank you for having me.
Yes, we appreciate you attending and representing for the council members. So thank you all for sharing that. I think it's just like a kickoff meeting. It's just helpful to sort of get to know folks around the room. And in case if we're meeting again and folks return to other sessions, it'd be great to sort of get to know each other and understand your connection to this work. So thank you for humoring me with that little exercise. So I did want to sort of start our meeting by sort of clarifying the scope for our group, and others who have been, I'm a new CEC member, so others who are more experienced, please feel free to chime in here. Were helpful, but I just wanted to clarify sort of the breadth of what we are hoping to discuss, just given that, you know, CEC, our group is specific to District 21, and we do not cover high schools. So I just wanted to clarify that we do work with programs ranging from 3K through 8th grade in District 21. We also do have District 75 representation, which I understand there are high school programs within that, but we're happy to have Petra here as a District 75 representative. So some of the work that I think we can work on, again, if others want to chime in on this, would be related to those grades specifically and related to special education for those groups. But I do want to share that if any concerns do come up that maybe fall without, sort of fall without that or beyond that realm, excuse me, that we're happy to sort of take notes. I'm happy to take notes and to be able to connect with other sort of citywide groups, whether it's for high schools, CCSE, et cetera, to get, you know, resolutions to something that might come up that fall beyond that scope. So Jay, Randy, you're sort of vets here. So wondering if there's anything that you have to add about clarifying the scope for our group.
Randy, do you have anything? I don't want to step on your toes.
No, I think you covered it pretty well.
Yeah, I think so as well. I mean, you know, this is the space to identify anything we want to discuss and work on, you know, within the special education realm, which is, you know, vast and it covers
Yes.
a lot. So, you know, anything that we want to tackle and then that we can then bring back to the full council, like during meetings, you know, this is the place to do it.
Mhm. Wonderful. And we do have our meetings calendared for the remainder of the school year. So I did want to share that in case you would like to attend upcoming sessions. Obviously, the conversations and the work will happen beyond this call today. So the intention today is to just really brainstorm, to Jay's point of like what projects we might be able to work on. It is a sort of very broad and complicated subject area, but we will brainstorm some ideas on what we can do as a committee and as a district, and have meetings calendared, trying for at least a couple of more through the remainder of the school year. We can discuss sort of ways to connect and work offline or in between meetings. So you can save the date, March 26th from 6 to 7:30. We'll have an additional Zoom session, and our final meeting will be June 21st. It's a Friday midday, just to give some options for folks who might not be able to join in the evening and give some daytime options for others. So just putting that on your radar. And what I would like to do today, trying to focus our time today, is just brainstorming some ideas on some projects and initiatives that our group might be able to facilitate through the end of the school year and beyond. So certainly just trying to brainstorm, getting any feedback, ideas, and we can sort of categorize and prioritize things that we think we can tackle, maybe grab some low-hanging fruit. Maybe there's some ideas that'll come out of our session, some low-hanging fruit, some longer-term projects. So just wanted to give the opportunity for us to, as a starting point, either get feedback for our CEC members, many of them liaise with different schools, but also serve in different capacities, right? So you might hear some things that are happening across the district, some parent experiences. So it's sort of like, what are you personally encountering? What are you hearing about? And what are some things that we might be able to, one, advocate for, or some initiatives that we might be able to sort of tackle to support any sort of concerns that are arising. So just wanted to open up to see if there's any feedback that you all have been hearing, concerns that you have, certainly concerns, and Mom, you mentioned around resources and having sufficient resources to support the children and this sort of specific population. So certainly something that could open up a myriad of ideas and how we can support with getting additional resources for our district. But wondering if there's sort of any issues that folks may have heard about, or if there are any ideas that you may have of things that you'd really like to see happen that we might be able to sort of elevate, whether it's either in our district or citywide, right? So just opening up the floor to see what feedback you all have or any ideas you might have for the. And I'm gonna start a Jamboard, or started a Jamboard, so I can sort of keep some notes and you all can see things that are coming up in our conversation. So any ideas? So I have tried to attend some of the citywide, the CCSE Citywide Council for Special Education meetings. And it's been interesting to hear some of the feedback that has been coming up across the city. I'm sure it's not, sort of like not a citywide story, but things that people are feeling close to home, and feedback around IEPs and parents being concerned about not sort of knowing the status of their kids getting their services, having shortages of related service providers, and therefore some kids not getting services and not being made aware. And just having like these overall citywide shortages of providers. And so those are some things that have come to mind. I've had some ideas on ways you might be able to advocate for things, both big and small, but just curious if that might sort of stem or spark any ideas or resonates with anyone. That's just from like a recent meeting that happened earlier this winter.
I was going to say that there's been a lot of talk about budget cuts, obviously, and specifically, and something that we could do in our council sometimes is write resolutions. I know we want to also be doing things that are more hands-on for our families and the students around the district. But there was something I would have been bringing it up here to actually write a resolution, but it was recently, what was it? Maybe 2 weeks ago now, I guess the mayor kind of reversed the plans that he kind of had set forth last month for like steep cuts to D75. I mean, there was cuts all across the DOE, but D75 is going to have like almost $100 million budget cut, which would have like, hit paraprofessionals and like a lot of the extracurriculars. Like in D75, that has been reversed. They restored those cuts. So like a resolution for that doesn't really apply, but I'm sure some of the other cuts that have not been restored, they still will hit, needs that we have in schools that affect kids in special education in our schools or with IEPs.
Helpful feedback and something to look into in terms of like what else remains to be, what remains sort of underfunded and what remains a concern. Any others? Things you've heard, feedback you've received, either in the district, other things you've heard about, things you care about from personal experience?
Yes. With regard to related services, I think it has always been a problem. Even sometimes once or twice, my son might have they'll send me some RSA. And I think the providers, the list is so outdated, it's not funny. I think parents have a hard time sometimes getting related services because when you call the numbers are not working. I think they should do a better job in updating those providers so that parents can have this thing rectified. And sometimes the service takes so long. I'm not in my school, my son's school, but I've been hearing parents really complaining about related services. And I think it's very sloppy.
Yeah, I remember being on a CCSE meeting and people sort of sharing and you all, many of you seem to have been connected to the early intervention experience. My early intervention experience was like you had logs and you knew sort of like when services were happening. Those were things that parents had to sign off on. The notifications, I feel like to start your services at the start of the year, at least for me this year, was different, where I had like the information from my service providers. They listed their information. Now, whether that changes through the year and if you get notified, I don't know if that's everyone's experience across all grade levels. I'm not sure, but certainly understanding like parents should get notification of who the service providers are, have correct and active contacts, and then having sort of a status of services is sort of some feedback that I've heard, and I'll make a note of that. Did that catch it, Petra?
Yes.
Others sort of have things that have come up for them this school year, just from their general experience. Is
At busing, in relation to busing, I think that busing have been improved because of the tracking system. I don't think every school, the tracking system is working, but some school they are working. I don't know, but they're trying to update the system, and I think they should do a better job so that every school should, every child, every parent should be able to track the school bus. Some schools, some buses have not activated the system as yet.
I didn't realize that, Petra. Are you using the new app?
Yes, I am. It's working.
It is working for you, but you said
For
it's
me,
not working
yes.
for everybody.
Yeah, some parents say it's not working.
yeah,
Is it that
and
it's
they
not working, or it's not even been made available for certain students or certain buses?
Well, maybe
Yeah.
it is not available for some students. Not that it's not working. But
Okay.
certain parents, they still get in a blank screen. And when they go on, they cannot see anything. They cannot track the bus.
Yeah, seems
the
like it was sort of like a partial rollout, so it wasn't all sort of kids who get busing were sort of available, or like not all parents could sort of connect A1, is my understanding.
But the expectation, Petra, is that like parents, because that's what I've seen. Like, I thought the expectation was that like if your child is receiving busing services, like the app should work for you. You not that like
Yes.
right, okay.
Yes, it should be for you.
Others have items to share?
And in relation to school visits also, not CEC, but I'm talking about just a parent going to visit a school. Certain parents said they have problems visiting their child's school. Like they cannot just walk in, you have to make an appointment. And some of them have difficulties. So I don't know what they can do to really accommodate those parents. Like if they wanted just to walk in and see what their child is doing, but certain schools, they do not accommodate that. You have to make an appointment.
Yes, that's the one sort of thing of post-COVID that I am missing. It's like improved access to the school and to teachers and stuff. I know that's been a bit of a struggle as we get back to being in person. And Amy, there was something that you had shared earlier. Just wanted to see if there's anything that you might want to relay back, but there was trying to like jog my memory. I'm sorry, it's been a very long day, but
I was thinking too. Is there something about the makeup section?
yes, and saying that like certain parents, I think that's what it was, like parents sort of not being aware of sort of like their options. And so I'm just wondering, are these parents who have already have their kids receiving services, or didn't even know that they could like get their children
Yeah, makeup.
evaluated and stuff like that?
Yeah, they should have make up a section that have not provided service.
Yeah,
I think that was the thing I would mention.
yep. Yeah,
Yeah, some parents they did not get notified or they have been like getting paid without getting the service. I think that was the issue for some of the
yeah.
action that was made.
Mhm.
Because we see a letter, I think for the early intervention, I remember we see a letter of how many section and day and time that you get the service. But if you get the letter, it did not match the day that you receive the service, you should always call and make sure.
Any
And
others?
I do have something else.
Yeah.
With reference to certain programs like music or art, sometimes the kids have to leave the borough to go to another borough because they can't get the programs in their own district. They'll have to go to Manhattan or somewhere else, and that's the only place they can get it. They do not provide those services in their neighborhoods.
Mhm. And that's in general or for children who get who have special ed services or receive related
Special ed
services?
services.
Mhm.
Yeah, special ed
So
services.
it's like it's like
Like-
enrichment programming, right?
Yes.
Local enrichment programming.
Right.
Mhm.
And Petra, has it been your experience that it doesn't exist at all, or is it that there's not enough seats or
There's-
not enough availability
Well,
locally? Or a
Well,
mix?
sometimes it doesn't exist at all.
Right, okay.
I'd be curious. So I'm just making notes and then I do want to sort of like dig into these a little bit more because there might be things we can do or like ideas that we can like facilitate connecting people to information, finding out information, etc. One thing that I was curious about, and some of you work in schools, some of you have worked with schools for a very long time, is sort of understanding the sort of like information sharing across different programs. So, you know, I have a principal that school liaison, I'm school liaison to a new principal, and they're doing some really cool stuff in terms of revamping their building to make it more friendly for kids who have special needs. Either one cool thing that's happening is like they repainted their hallways to make it easier for kids to identify the floor that they're on because it was just like one beige, like a beige blur, the whole school. And it might be hard for kids who are nonverbal to sort of assess where they are, especially if they're younger. And so that was one thing that they have done in their space to sort of make it more supportive for students who are nonverbal and might need assistance with navigating their building. They also have sensory paths. So if kids have to like burn off energy, they get to sort of go out in the hallway for a few minutes, do some stuff to get refocused and then get back into the classroom. And they also submitted a request through different, not through CEC, but through different sort of ways of funding projects to create a sensory gym. So to create like a multi-purpose room, so it'd be like a gym, dance space, and a sensory gym. And so I've also done walkthroughs and see sort of like similar things happening. You know, some programs have figured out really well, like how to manage their bridge programs. This is really just elementary schools I'm speaking of, but I don't know if you all know if there are sort of like these sharing of best practices or if that's like something that we can help facilitate or at least like elevate so that other schools know, can reach out to a school if they're curious to know, like, where did you get this from? How did you procure it? Sometimes that could be complicated. How did you get this project funded? So I don't know if that sort of already happens, but that was just something that I thought was interesting of sort of understanding and sharing best practices of like how different schools within our district even are serving kids with special needs and doing it in creative ways. So I'm not sure if something like that already exists, if it happens, if you all might sort of know what happens at meetings at the district level, but that was a curiosity, but I don't know if anyone knows or can speak to that.
I mean, you know, it's hard for us sometimes to facilitate that, you know, because it does come through the superintendent's office. But like what you're saying is like that's the type of thing we strive for, like the cross-pollination of ideas. Like, sometimes people figure out things in one corner of
Yeah.
the district, that works well, and other people hear about it and think like, hey, that's a great idea. That's something we'd like to do here. We could, might maybe the best way for us to kind of facilitate that would be like to like almost showcase something at some point during one of our CEC meetings.
Mhm.
If there's some like really good, practices that are working well at certain schools.
Yep. Cool. Yeah. One like really big, high lofted idea too is sitting in this meeting with CSE is this sort of conversation around shortages for related service providers. They're saying like at a national level, they're really short of physical therapists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, etc. And I know Kingsborough has this early education, this early college sort of program. And wondering if we could sort of advocate, and this might be like a very high pie in the sky idea, but having a program, and I brought this up at the CCSE meeting as well, but having a program to, facilitate that. Like Brooklyn College is in our neighborhood and in our district. They have early childhood programs. So if there were sort of CUNY schools that could sort of offer, or we could create some type of like merged program. I know we don't sort of oversee high school, but I know we have sort of like these sort of pseudo programs that start kids at a younger age, but sort of serving as a pipeline, right, to meet that need. And that's definitely like a longer term goal. But I think that could be a cool thing that our borough/district could be a part of, since we do have certain programs that offer something like that. The kids can sort of fast track to professions, and we have a need, and it's sort of like a pathway to stable city work. So that's like a very high pie in the sky idea, but that's just something that came up after attending the CCSE meeting. But we'll see. I don't know.
We can also maybe invite to maybe the following committee meeting for this committee, like one of the CCSE members. There's one or two I know who I could probably reach out to who are like more local to our corner of Brooklyn. So like if you'd want that, like they probably also, because they're in their meetings regularly and working in that space and advocating in that space regularly, like they might have some of these things that you're touching on. They might have something right off the top of their head that they're aware of that's been done, or something that was tried but it didn't work out for some reason, and some other way they're trying to go about it.
Yep.
I know some of us right now, when we're thinking about, like you call it pie in the sky, but they're good ideas, they're things to strive for. But like we're in the position where we don't know what we don't know.
Sure.
Like they probably at least know what they don't know, and they've probably been trying to address those sort of issues.
Yep. Sounds good. Anything else that comes up for you all? Things that you think we might be interesting projects, initiatives that our group might be able to tackle, and or just some concerns you have, and then I'll revisit those little post-its, virtual post-its, and we could talk about maybe what we can do as a committee.
I don't want to keep going back to because I'm the person who brought up like budget cuts, which is a huge citywide issue that isn't just special education, but another huge citywide issue that's been talked about a bunch, and I'm bringing it up for a particular reason, is the mayoral control and whether or not in Albany it will be extended for the current administration. There's been hearings about that. I was at one last night in Staten Island for mayoral control, but there was a special education teacher with decades of experience who gave testimony at the hearing, and he had a really interesting idea, because everybody speaking at the mayoral control hearings who is against mayoral control or wants it reformed, which is almost everybody who speaks, honestly. But one of the things to reform it, like that could be done quickly, that people are advocating for, is the Panel for Education Policy, which is supposed to be the body that works with the mayor on the policy for our public schools. The majority is appointed by the mayor, so you know, there's this sense, and there's been some history of it where, you know, what the mayor wants, the panel, you know, was able to put through, because the majority of the appointees are appointed by the mayor, and they go with what the mayor is advocating for. So the one thing that people have been advocating for is to change that balance and make it so it's not majority appointees from the mayor. This one special education teacher who spoke last night was advocating for the same, but he specifically, and I thought this was really interesting, I've not heard this, and everybody kind of nodded their head like, that's a great idea, is because 20% of students in our school system have an IEP, roughly. He said, you know, when we reallocate seats, 20% of the seats, so if it's a 23, you know, seats, so 2 or 3 or whatever it may be, we'd have to figure out the exact number, but he said that they should be members who either had an IEP themselves or a parent of a child at some point who had an IEP, which was a great idea, because it's, you know, we have people, you know, there is some criticism that some of these panel members, you know, don't even have education experience or familiarity. That's one thing, but you know, the idea to have a few at least members on the panel that would have you know, and I said 2 or 3, it would be more like 3 or 4, or 4 or 5, I guess, if we're talking about a 23-member panel. You know, that would be a really good idea, to like actually have people on the panel, some number of them, who have a direct relationship with IEPs, whether personally themselves or personally through their child or children.
Awesome. Okay. Very interesting point indeed. Lots of common sense things I think came up from those meetings. And I think if you had to do rough math of the people who were in favor of mayoral control or against it, the numbers are pretty high. I think it's like easy math to do that. It was like 99% are against mayoral control. So it's just fascinating to hear the different perspectives, for sure. But that's an excellent point. Okay, good stuff. All right, so I am curious if there's any other sort of feedback, things that have come up. And if not, I'll just go through the board and then see what ideas you might have in terms of things that we may be able to do to sort of either support conversations, spread resources, etc. So any other feedback, ideas from anyone here? Sounds good. So I'm going to start with this first post-it here on the top left. So you made a point, Jay, that there were certain cuts that were on sort of like potentially sort of slated to happen, but wound up being reversed. But there could be questions of things that remain underfunded. So I'm wondering sort of ideas from the group, things that we think we might be able to do to support this, sort of answer this question or get a sense of like to assess the needs in our district even. What are some things we might be able to do? I'm not saying that we're gonna sort of like commit to them, but I think we can sort of brainstorm ideas and then sort of toward the end of our meeting decide on like what we want to move forward. So one thing that comes to mind is like a survey. I don't know if they'd go to schools or put it out on our Facebook page, but just trying to get feedback from people on what they've heard. I've heard from those meetings, from those hearings, lots of people talking about like losing staff members. That can be very impactful. Don't know how it can impact the related services, or to your point, Petra, like experiences that these kids are getting that the school could previously support but no longer can, even if it's like, you know, trips or certain enrichment classes that, you know, kind of allow kids to do things beyond just like math, reading, etc. So thoughts on things that we might want to do to assess what we've seen happening in our schools, like what's underfunded. We can make that broad to like things that schools are losing, make it broad in that way to advocate, and can also get at how it's impacting special education services and supports in schools. Some people have also said they've lost guidance counselors, right? That all can impact kids as well and their support services. So thoughts on that or any others? And this will be again at assessing and trying to understand what is underfunded after certain recent restorations or cuts to the budget cuts. So wondering if there's anything there, or if we want to note the survey as a potential project.
Yeah, I mean, I could do a little research into it, and I could ask some of the folks who kind of advocate in this space or like are on CCSC. I think like I said, the cuts that were slated for D75 that were restored, that's specific, it was specific because that's a big umbrella, D75. It's a district. And obviously it's all special education. That was restored, thankfully. But a lot of the other cuts that remained, there were cuts slated for like programs like Summer Rising, and that was restored. But it seems like now we're really relegated with cuts that aren't specific to programs, but are just going to hit schools. So, and then, the school obviously has to cut, dial things back and make cuts in their school budget, and then services or programs go away. So like, I guess I could try to do some research and talk to some, I'll try to like reach out and talk to some folks about, is there anything concrete as to like how that's affecting anything specific to special education, children with IEPs? Like you said, a lot of those positions that you're talking about, especially positions that maybe haven't been filled, that maybe the schools thought were going to get filled soon, that may not now.
Sounds good. Definitely could be helpful context. Okay. Any
Yeah,
other ideas? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think a lot of us, through professional experience, have seen things where like they decide there's going to be some sort of budget cut, and if there was some sort of position in your organization or in a school that had been open, that they've been trying to fill and weren't going to fill, all of a sudden, like they need to cut something. A lot of times that's the one they just say, cut that one that we've been allowed to fill and trying to fill. And maybe it's really important. It's a counselor. But you don't want to get rid of the people that are there working currently and doing it, supporting your students. So a lot of times that's the thing that goes away.
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. Any other notes about the cuts, the budget cuts, any ideas that we might be able to connect to that? This next one, we have related services, parents having issues with getting access to their providers, knowing who the contacts are. Sometimes the numbers are outdated, and there's not adequate notice for services being provided, and that there's shortages. So wondering if there's any ideas here on things that we might be able to either advocate for. So it could be resolutions, advocacy, trying to think outside the box on things that we can support with. Whether it's like advocating for certain system changes, maybe we can write a resolution to that effect. But yeah, curious if what sort of reactions you think, like what resolutions would be helpful, suggestions, etc. For this particular item.
And I take it, Petra, you've experienced that specifically, like numbers that are out of date and don't work, and
Yes, because for a short period, because the school have a very good principal, for a short period, and they send me this RSA, and I actually literally call the whole book. Some numbers were outdated, some people do not have the service anymore. And they have this strange thing saying that even though you get a provider, if the provider is in your area, they cannot service your child. There's a lot of rules. Yes, because I got somebody close and she said, oh no, I can't do it. You'll have to get a provider. So somewhere in Bay Ridge, the place was far. And then you have to bring your child in. I mean, it's very exhausting.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I imagine that I know your principal, like you said, your principal is very good, and your principal's, yeah, and your principal's working on that list and trying to make sure it's not, full
that
of.
was just a short period of time, because By that time, they rectified the problem. The provider, he got the service.
I'm curious though, are they getting, because like you can only use only you've contracted, service providers with the DOE can be part of
Yeah.
that list, and that's a very strict process on who gets through and gets vetted and gets on that, can be on that list. So it's like, I wonder if it's just the information from DOE is coming through, and not being updated.
I don't think it's been updated. It's a very tiresome process.
I mean, it's something we could always follow up on too. See if the, internally in the DOE, if there's a way they can identify providers that are no longer active and then
Yes,
notify the schools who like had put them on their list.
exactly.
So I'm sort of clustering this one and yours, Amy, together because some of this seems related to like parent experiences, right? Like not having access to providers, not getting sort of sufficient and adequate notice of like services that are being offered, rescheduled, logs being inaccurate. So putting this out there, of course, we can try pie in the sky idea per se, but like trying to draft something to improve access to information. So one thing that comes to mind is sort of like DOE system. I know your IEP is supposed to be accessible in your child's account, but if they could also sort of like upload your provider information there, make sure that schools keep it updated. So if you do have changes to your service providers, you have access to that information. One thing I would love to see, because as much as I love my child's school, I never get a sense of like when he has sessions, if they're sort of up to speed with them. And I don't pry because I don't want to be obnoxious, but truth be told, like he is getting his services, but whether he's getting it 3 times a week or twice because they're short, I honestly don't know. But I would love to be able to see sort of the records of services happening just so I could be aware. So I would advocate to have that accessible for parents, so you have a sense of the sort of cadence and confirmation that your kids are getting their sessions, and you can at least check in with them to verify it. But I feel like for me personally, it's just been this black hole of like assuming that everything is happening, but not really having confirmation. And I have a decent relationship with my school, so I can imagine parents who maybe don't have as responsive of sort of staff members and programs. So I don't know if that's like a resolution, sort of brainstorming, bringing it up to a different group, but try to advocate for updates to that system to give people more access to the the information for so that the system would show your related services, who those providers are, their contact information, and then potentially like a log of the services that your kids are receiving based on their IEP, which should be transparent, but it's not.
Yeah, Randy dropped.
Yeah. Absolutely. So any reactions to that? Do you think I'm a nutbag, or do you think that that's worth something we was drafting?
I'm sorry, what was that?
So in terms of like, I don't know if it's a form of resolution or advocacy in meetings or a little bit of both, but trying to advocate for that change in the system. So in the accounts that we all should already have access to, sort of making some updates so that, don't think it'll be a short-term thing, but making sure that parents can access not only their kids' IEPs, but their service provider information, and potentially logs, even if it's in phases, but being able to get more access to information so they can verify like who their providers are and the services that they're getting.
Yeah. Again, I'm curious if someone from CCSE, like if they've, kind of talked about that before. I can follow up with someone.
Yeah, no problem. I definitely have sort of like a next step, and I'm happy to do that too, is just reaching out to CCSE. I wanted to have someone come from their group, but I figured we could sort of brainstorm first. Definitely, I can help with any of having a plate. I can definitely do some reach, and you work your circles too, your channels, but I'm happy to do that as well. Service providers, service in my schools, or I get all the systems confused. Sorry, my son's freaking out back here. And then I don't know what y'all think about just like having access to information, but I feel like some of this may already exist, but like maybe having a page on our website that sort of has information from organizations, like there's groups like, Include NYC and others that might have resources so that parents can know, right? Like maybe we could direct people to our website and say, not sure, like what your options are for a makeup or what your rights are as a parent, just like having a landing space for some resources. So if that does come up, we have links that we can send to people. But just wondering if you think that might be helpful, Amy, just given some of your experience. I know you deal with it at a school level, but I think that could be helpful just as like a resource to direct people to. Resources to direct people to.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea for the website. Like, District 21 does that. They do that in their newsletter. They like, and that obviously it's not specific to special education, but like, they provide information about local food banks and things like that. Like they put a bunch of just community resources out there. So yeah, that's something we could definitely look to do like on our website.
Maybe a
Okay, so-
bulletin board too, right? In school.
Yeah. Advocate for it for sure.
Mhm.
And you all may know, but I mean, yeah. In terms of sort of managing, I know certain schools may have like designees that serve as like points for these types of services, but I don't know if we could sort of like, they have like sustainability people that were either like volunteered or voluntold. I've heard of that multiple times around sustainability practices, but if we do have a liaison like that at schools, if that's a mandate, or is that really just on administration? Just curious if you all know, but in terms of like getting a bulletin board up or sharing resources at the school level with parents, like who would the contact there be? Probably not universal, I
Yeah,
imagine. Yeah.
I'm not certain.
Okay.
We could find out.
Yeah. They did mention, and I don't remember off the top of my head, but there was like some sort of like mandatory training that they were trying to implement around like, I guess trying to dismantle, or I don't know if that's the right word, but to debunk myths, that's the right terminology. That's what I'm thinking of, around IEP services, makeup services. So I can get more information and share that with you all, but I think there is an effort from the Central Special Education Office. They had shared this at a past CSE meeting to train, because there has been like a lot of changes, and then also like rumors become facts, but they're not facts in terms of like what you qualify for, what the process is, what's happening. So trying to dedicate some time, I think in one of the June PD days, for some special education topics to be covered, who's facilitating that, or if it's just like a list of things that they speak to people, that could be it too. But I do know that that's somewhat of like an initiative. So wondering if that might be like an entry point, or at least advocate to the central special ed team, like what kind of content could be helpful to revisit, or to implement, I don't know, but I do know that they're trying to streamline or realign people on what the messaging is. So look into that too. Okay. In terms of busing, we have improved experiences with the tracking system. It's not active across all programs, so understanding the timeline for schools to be connected, that's something that I could look into. I don't know if that's something maybe we might want to share as an update to like the information that we get at an upcoming CEC meeting. You let me know what you think. I don't know if that's like specific to special education services, but I can find out, like, do kids who have special needs get priority to be in that system, or is it solely program based? But what do you all think about the possible action item or follow-up here?
Yeah, I actually reached out to someone I know who advocates specifically on special education, but also busing in particular. And she just responded to me that there's been she's heard a lot of trouble with the app.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it obviously, a lot of kids, have busing services, when we're talking about percentages, like kids in D75, and then even special education as well, like there's a higher percentage when you go into those populations that utilize busing,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
which is even more imperative that the system work that
Yeah,
has been touted that is such a
absolutely.
benefit to parents that they can do that. Yeah, and Tony just said from Councilman Brown's office that she can reach out to the city public schools about that.
Wonderful. Thanks, Tony. Be interesting to hear sort of their rollout plan and which schools, I guess, are part of it or not at this point, but.
So I mean, sometimes with some new big piece of technology, like it's not a surprise. It doesn't help the parents who are really, looking to have this.
And I think there was like some murmurs of it not being a full sort of rollout, but I don't know if that was super clear to people, but they did do this sort of big announcement. So I think there are probably very high expectations based on that it applied to everyone when maybe it didn't. So
Yeah,
it'll
their
be interesting.
announcement seemed like it was pretty.
Like, we have this wonderful app and you'll never lose your child again, and it doesn't really apply to everyone just yet. So it's
Yeah, and
fascinating.
I thought when they made their big announcement when it went live, they even noted like how many students, like they noted the number of students, like this, big number of students, like all this number of students can now be tracked on the bus, which like made it sound as though that's everyone.
Yep, yep. So we will definitely follow up about that. Thank you for offering to help, Tony. See the message in the chat.
Please, just a comment.
Yeah.
I don't think everyone can use the app, because I think the only way you can track your school bus is when there is school, when your child is on the bus. As long as the bus stop running, you cannot track anything again. I don't think some parents are aware of that.
Chat, it's not working. Fair enough. Okay. So this sort of, I think, is low hanging fruit, but having speakers from CCSE or making connections with that group to see what we might be able to do at the district level to get insight on what they've attempted, and any sort of guidance they may have. They do have a district support committee, and I haven't gotten much information about that just yet. I actually did email Rose, who's their AA, to get more information to see if they do have meetings calendared, both for CCSE, because I haven't seen anything since November, and for that group. But I do think that the intention of that committee is to sort of give support to districts, so to kind of sort of like cross-pollinate, right? Give feedback, to talk about like what's successful in other districts. If people are encountering issues, sort of trying to talk about best practices to overcome them at the district level. So that's sort of their way of like zooming down from CCSE being citywide to supporting the district. So I can try and get more information about that. But that would be interesting to see sort of like how that's going and what feedback they've gotten. So certainly can work on getting speakers for our March meeting. And then this item, Petra, in terms of like local enrichment programming that's designated for students, one, I think it would be interesting to know like what programs actually exist and can it be helpful to share information, and certainly is one to sort of like advocate for funding and more resources. So wondering what others think about that and what programs you may know about, but I could certainly sort of start doing some research of like what resources exist specifically in District 21 for kids who might have sort of like a myriad of needs, have curiosities, interests, and groups that really, I think, know how to work with kids with special needs. I find that that's a big vacuum at times.
For example, music. Sometimes it's going to be very extremely difficult to get a music program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
something we connect with our elected folks about, but we will definitely see what's out there, and maybe it's a matter of just like advertising and broadcasting it, or advocating for more of them certainly is helpful. Cross-pollination of ideas, possibly showcasing them at CEC meetings. So this is like any best practices that come up in programs. So I don't know, maybe we can make an announcement at our next meeting, Jay, that just specifically to like special education, we want to start showcasing some things that schools are doing that has been successful. Maybe they email it and we can compile it and do like a presentation. So it's not like things sort of ad hoc, but maybe a little more intentional. Can help think about how we can structure that.
And when we do on our agenda, we have a committee updates section, and you could provide the update for this committee, and you could speak to that, and you could put that call out. As you're typing that, I just want to point out Randy dropped a bunch of resources in the chat.
Yes, yes. And Steve, if you don't mind sending the chat stuff to me for whatever reason, I don't know why it's not copying for me. I'm having to take screenshots of it, but I will try to catch them before we disconnect here.
Liz, you can't click the links. If you click the links on them, they'll open
Yeah,
and then you can save them that way. I'm sorry, I was on my phone, so I
no,
switched
it's
to
fine.
computer to
Yes.
just have the
They
resources.
also, since I'm recording, it creates like a whatever's in the chat, it records that as well. So
Okay.
I'll just forward that.
Cool. Okay, so welcome schools to share their best practices at CEC meetings.
And I have another comment. I feel that certain districts, schools, they're overfunded, some are underfunded. So I don't know the balance, how they really go about doing the programs for the different schools and stuff. Certain schools are really underfunded, and certain schools have a lot of money to do whatever they need to do.
Are you talking about like D75 schools in particular?
Yes, this 5 in particular.
Are you talking about D75 standalone schools, or are you talking about also schools with D75 programs within them?
Schools with these 75 programs,
Okay.
because when I visited PS 100,
Mhm.
This school needs some support with reference. They need a sensory room, and the way the principals, she said they're not Title I, and sometimes they need a lot of programs, a lot of stuff. Like sometimes they cannot even get it.
Yeah. And it seems interesting because like I also, just having experienced stuff, like some have like very active PTAs and they find creative ways. Some schools are very savvy in knowing how to access like funding from different sources. Yeah, so I think that that's probably multifactorial and complicated, but certainly made a note of like things that we can be mindful of, like spreading the love, in terms of like resources and opportunities and programming for schools. This is a deep one too, Jay. We have decision makers, thinking of PEP in particular, trying to advocate for some ratios to be reflective of the population, right? So for 20% of kids who have IEPs, having that being sort of represented and reflected in these sort of like decision-making spaces and panels, with PEP being one of the examples. So what are you thinking there? Maybe, you all might hear as a result of some of these meetings of like resolutions that others are doing, and sometimes they're joint efforts. Is that something that we think we want to get involved on, put it in a parking lot? What do y'all think about something in that regard?
I thought that, like I said, like when I heard that gentleman bring that up, I thought, and it wasn't just me, it sort of got like everybody did one of those like, oh yes, good idea. Because people who are talking, and like I said, most people are advocating for a change to the current mayoral control structure, but it's all about the mayor and the DOE and just the overarching structure from a high level. But his whole speech focused on special education. His his qualms with the current structure and the ramifications for it were all around special education. And then when lots of people who are talking about mayoral control and wanting to reform it, talk about changing the composition of the appointees to the PEP. But his idea to while doing that, because if that was going to be done, that would be the time to do what he just brought up. You know,
Yeah,
to actually
absolutely.
say, like, we need, just like how we have on our council, we have a D75 member, an IEP member, an L parent. You know, it's a great idea. It's good to have representation from people who know this, you know, from lived experiences.
And has our group ever sort of like written, so like a resolution, I think goes to the DOE, right? For the most part, for their sort of action. But what about like letters to like state officials? So there was opportunity to sort of submit written testimony, but I think that closes tomorrow.
Yes.
But can a CEC sort of like draft a letter that goes to, let's say it goes to NYSED to say, hey, these are like additional things that we've heard and support, concerns that our group has, ideas we want to like elevate and make sure you sort of like take more credence to. Is that something that our group can do? Because I don't know if like writing resolution to the DOE will make a difference, because I don't know if I saw the chance to sort of speak to wanting to retain mayoral control. So I don't know if that he'd be a person to sort of push forward a resolution to revise the panel, but wondering if we have like other means to advocate in a written sort of like way, formal way.
Well, if it's things like that are like policy related, like the way we speak as a council collectively is through a resolution, you know, because it needs to be voted on.
I see.
So that would be through a resolution. We send our resolutions to anybody who is in a, you know, decision-making capacity, or advocates sometimes too. Sometimes we've sent it to advocacy groups as well, but it's not just to the DOE. Like, we will send it to elected officials. We could send it to NYSED. We could send it to the Board of Regents. We could send it to Governor Hochul. Like, we can send a resolution, you know, anywhere we want.
Gotcha.
But that's how we speak collectively, you know, together.
Mhm.
If we, for instance, if we wanted to, you know, it wouldn't be specific to this, but this would be like maybe out of this committee, we could add it into, if we chose to write our own resolution on mayoral control and just what we think about it, that would be one thing. But you don't have to ask for one thing. You know, when we do all our whereas statements, and then we have our concluding statements, what we're asking for, what we're advocating for, we could, you know, advocate for, you know, certain changes, and that could be one of them. That any change, or it doesn't need to be a change, it could just be that, like, you know, we propose that, you know, we're advocating for a percentage of the PEP members to be reflective of, you know, people familiar with the IEP or special education in New York City public schools.
Let's see, about that, we mentioned that in the school visits. So we have, you know, sort of concerns around parents not having access to their child's school programs and being able to sort of like engage with their kids and their schools and the admins and teachers in the way that they may like. And Petra, you know, is this something specific to like some of the programs that you visited, general school experience? Just curious, sort of like how this has shown up in your sort of interactions with folks.
Well, that's not my personal experience because I can go to my son's school and but I've heard some in District 75 President Council meeting. Certain parents said that they're having difficulties that just walking to their child's school, just to speak with the principal or even have a look. Sometimes that can be difficult because, you know, they have a schedule. But she said that they literally tell them they have to make an appointment. They can't just walk in. And she has a big problem with that because she said she don't want to make an appointment. Like, I don't know if she's looking to see if a child is being treated properly or if the program is, some parents just want to walk in. So that might be, they have their pros and cons.
Sure, of course, yeah. I could see the challenge with that being a concern
Yeah.
for certain schools, but it also shouldn't be that like you can't, like your school's inaccessible and is like a fortress that you can't access and connect with. So, okay. Well, if you hear any more about that, I think that'll be helpful for us to sort of revisit, just to sort of honor that feedback that people have been getting. And I'll be sure to keep an ear out for those C75 meetings as well. Funding. And same with the balance of funding, resources and opportunities for some spaces. So if you have certain programs in mind, that would be helpful to share. So maybe we can do a little bit more targeted support and outreach just to kind of get a sense of some of the dynamics, because that seems like that could be complex. Okay. So I have sort of things noted here as like issues or experiences, things that we see are sort of happening in the district, some possible things that we can work on. So what I propose is just sort of like merging this into some notes. We could share out updates at our CEC meeting, give access to the whole group here. And then we can sort of regroup potentially offline on things that we might want to move forward. I can maybe start a survey. And if you want to receive that survey, because of course this is open to the public, feel free to drop your email in the chat and I could be sure to follow up with you on that. Which sort of segues to my next point of trying to outline ways that we can connect and collaborate between meetings. So I'm sure if it's necessitated, we could always have additional working sessions offline, but doing remote collaboration just to follow up and move on some of these things, just thinking of like surveys, emails, we could always start like Google Documents to collaborate on things. So I will start first potentially with a survey just to understand, what we want to prioritize maybe as a group, like folks can vote on what they want to support and or move forward, and we can prioritize sort of our efforts based on that, and some work in between before our next session on March 26th. Are there any other sort of ideas, preferences, thoughts on working in
Another
between?
comment.
Yeah.
With reference to certain meetings like SLTs, I think parents and other people should have a choice between hybrid. Well, now you have to come in person, and I don't think sometimes they just have to amend the bylaws, because it will not work for every parent to be in the school for 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
I think there should be an amendment. They should really change the rules. It should be hybrid in person. You just give the parent a choice.
Yeah.
That's true. It's state law. It's state law.
Yeah.
It's open meetings law. Even if you had the option, like my school, our SLT meetings are hybrid, but the members have to still go in person unless they have extraordinary circumstances. So for outside parents that want to come in and observe, they're more than welcome to come in person or virtually. But the members, the SLT members, still must come in person.
Yeah, but I'm hearing a lot of grievances about it, Brandy, to be honest.
I know, I agree, but it's state law. It's nothing. It's not even the DOE that can change that state law.
Yeah, so it's
And
the
that's-
state open meetings law, and it applies to the state Senate and the state assembly. And like there's obviously reasons why we want elected officials to meet, in front of the public and public have access. But it also applies to certain other bodies, and it's like laid out in the law, and that's community boards. But in school, so I'm just talking now about like volunteer stuff that like normal community folks do, and they volunteer for like community board, but it's also SLT, it's CEC. So it applies to that. That would be a thing, there's been some advocacy for changing that for, volunteer based bodies, appointed or elected bodies. But I know like John Liu, Senator John Liu, like I was at something with him and that came up, and he has valid reasons why, he doesn't, especially for CECs, he doesn't want to change because he wants, the public to be able to be in front of the CEC. SLTs, because it's specific to each individual school, that seems a little different. I think lots of us have been on our SLTs. A lot of times it's, just the people on the SLT, whoever is part of it, meeting in the library, wherever it is. It's not like, you have a lot of people from the public coming to grill you on things.
Yes.
So, whether or not there's a way to kind of advocate for like carving out something like that's a possibility to like advocate for that. But like Randy said, like right now, the state law, like,
Mhm.
there's nothing, no way to change that at the moment.
And that has come up. I remember sitting in on like some DOE session and they were saying that'd be a great thing for parents to advocate for reforming because it does sort of, I mean, I think even like PTA meetings, SLT meetings, CEC meetings, like I think having hybrid options helps us engage with certain people. Like it's a lot to ask people to come out to an auditorium. So hybrid options do allow them to engage, but maybe there's like some type of compromise even for CECs. Like if you alternate your meetings, like some are hybrid, some are virtual, the next meeting's in person or hybrid, etc. But yeah, I personally think it would be nice to have the flexibility, and I think it could open up doors for more people to engage, but that does
And-
seem
and
like a bigger picture thing, like beyond just like, I think a lot of people would have to rally to get that change to happen.
And just to the point though, like PTAs are not subject to the open meetings law. They're not part of that. And they're very similar to CECs in terms of like the fact that like what they do pertains to the school. It's relegated just to that school. Same thing with SLT. But they're both elected members. But PTAs, if it's in their bylaws, they could just meet on Zoom all the time if they choose to. But SLTs don't have that option.
Definitely can table that, put them in the parking lot picture for us to maybe even consider, as like a bigger sort of conversation. So I think for next steps, just in terms of the information was discussed today, again, I'll type everything up, put in a Google document for folks to access, and we'll put out a survey just to kind of get a sense of what folks might be interested in moving forward, just so we kind of acquiesce around that. And I think we sort of talked a bit about like new business and ideas for speakers and presenters, but just wanted to open up the floor in case folks do have suggestions for new business, or speakers and presenters for upcoming meetings. So wondering if there's anything to add there. Seconds. And then the next item is just general public comment or questions. Sounds good. So I promise to sort of follow up with some notes and highlights from our chat today. And again, to connect on things that our group may do and assess interest across our group. So if we don't have any other suggestions and no other public comments, I'm going to request a motion to end our meeting.
Motion.
Well, thank you, Amy, and we need a
Motion.
second. Wonderful. Okay. So thank you all for joining, and I hope you're keeping warm and having a great week. And if you have anything offline, feel free to reach out to me, and I appreciate again you making the time and for your advocacy because it's really important work. So I'll see you all at our next meeting and chat in between.
Bye. Have a good night,
Bye. Thank you so
everyone.
much for joining. Yes.
Have a
Thanks,
good
Liz.
night.
Good night, everyone.
Have a great night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night,
Thanks,
Petra.
Petra.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.